As usual, my recommendation being that if you start loose, you can finish tight. If you start tight, you're stuffed. And one thing I don't like about people doing pen and ink very often, students coming in, is if you do the watercolour first and then do pen and ink afterwards, it looks like a chicken's been going at it. You know, you do far too many lines, you get far too... If you do your pen and ink work first and make a nice pen and ink drawing and then tint it afterwards, you're likely to be more successful, I find. You don't overdo the amount of pen, it doesn't get too scratchy and too fiddly. So it's just a warning. Some people, when they're used to it, when you get more advanced, okay, you can just pick it out of it with a pen and ink, but why are we even using pen and ink? I'm always a bit wary, you know, as to why you want to do that, because it becomes a coloured drawing, doesn't it? But it can be very effective. So what I want to do today is, first of all, we're going to start off with my little jar of black ink. I'll cover it up. Just use that with a stick first to dip in, and then get into a brush. Chinese don't draw with pencils. I mean, they're drawing with a brush the whole time. A brush is a far nicer medium than the pencil. It's far more fluid and flowing. You get much nicer shapes.
Cavemen didn't have brushes, did they?
For fingers? This is what we're getting into with these big abstracts, you know. Fingers, hands, palette knives, painting, whatever. So let's just straight away start working in some darks. And obviously, if you're working on a flat, this is probably easier to be working vertically, because working on the flat, it's going to come off the stick more easily. If I put the stick back, it's going to be better for me. But yes, normally I can draw a line quite long, you see, with the stick like that, get it going, as I can with the brush. So a piece of stick is very effective. Just going to put these darks in and try and keep out of your way. You're still right behind me. Can you still, I see you're stretching across there a bit. There is a seat in the middle behind the camera if you want it there, so do feel you can move if you can't quite see.
Would you normally draw it out with a pencil first?
Now, when I'm doing a loose watercolour, although it might be loose when I paint, you can't paint into a bad drawing, you know. I mean, when I'm doing an actual painting like one of these, well, a watercolour like the one in the middle, I'd be a bit more careful about. But when I'm doing a larger oil or something, all I need is the basics, and I can work with it. I can draw as I'm painting. But if I'm going to do a figure painting or something like this, or that watercolour in the middle, then I draw fairly carefully. But I don't go putting in all the eyes and nose and all the little dots and dashes, just the basic outline, so I know where forms are going to be. If you don't, then I can go loose within those shapes. But if I have bad shapes to start with, it's going to make it even worse, it'll enhance them. So yeah, that's not a good idea. Another nice thing to draw with, if you're doing large pastels on pastel paper, is a cotton, you know, the cotton wool bud on the stick. Dip those into Indian ink and actually work those up. It can be very useful with working the darks up for the pastel before you even start. So that's quite fun to do as well. Something we may well do in the future, and I'll show you. But I'm just going to be fairly loose with this stick work at the moment. I just want to get some texturing going on. The pencil lines always seem to disappear all right. People often say, well, you can see your pencil lines at the moment. You do find with watercolour that those pencil marks tend to just vanish as you go on. Not too worried about that. So yes, stick rather than pen. If I want to use a pen, I no longer use the old dip pens. These waterproof trophy pens, of which you can get them in all those various point sizes anyway. And they last for ages, provided you keep the top on. They shouldn't dry out. So I've got the dip pens, but I hardly ever use them now. Now, because I've got a lot of darks here, I've got a choice. Do I work in? I don't normally use black at all. I mean, I wouldn't normally do this pen and ink or brush work with the black. It's just sort of a demonstration today. Now, I could do all that dark area with the black and with a larger mop and then thin it out and do watches and all sorts. It's just really to show the versatility of how we can work with this. So that's the beauty of the brushes, that the stick will give you a lovely even line, especially flat, but the brush you can go into detail or not by your choice. Water, I'm going to do a little bit of wash onto there, let that flood in. So normally I'd be doing this with colour rather than tone. Got a bit of fun. As an impressionist, then I don't believe in black as a colour unless I'm going to use it as a blue. Quite good for green actually at times, the other. Because where there is light, there has to be colour. So there cannot be pure white and there cannot be pure black because. So we can paint it like watercolour, the Indian ink. or we can paint into more detail. So you can paint finely or heavily, and again now if I want to come down, just to give you the technique, so you could then make your minds up as to how you're going to use this yourself in your paintings as you go along. This would probably, the last time I did this as a demonstration, I did birch trees, and that worked much better than this, as a subject, much better than this, because you can imagine all the twigs of the birch trees. I started with the brush, building up the darks amongst the birch trees and all the roots and the shadows. Then I went on to the stick and finished off the medium branches, then I finished with the Profi pen for the very, very fine ones. We were using £140 knot paper, an intermediate paper today, although a hot press would be just as good for this pen and ink work. With pen and ink work I always prefer to do the pen and ink first and then the watercolour wash afterwards, otherwise you can get rather busy and scratchety with it. Piece of stick to do stick and ink with the Indian ink, a bottle of Indian ink, 2 waterproof fine line pens which are great for doing the fine twigs and branches or cross-hatching work, a small brush, and I'll have my wash brush as well just to finish off with the washes, and that should be all I need. Well, I'm going to start off with my heavier work. I'm going to start off with my stick and ink work with the stick and a little bit of Indian ink, pour some into my palette. Indian ink, wonderful stuff, waterproof afterwards once it's dried, but be careful where you get it, because obviously it's very dangerous stuff in the fact that it is waterproof, and if you get it all over yourself you can be in a right mess. So a stick and ink, brush and ink are both beautiful ways to work. So I can work with either my stick or my brush to do this sort of work. It's amazing how much of a line you can make with a bit of stick like this. I'll just dip it into my palette and you'll see what I mean. I'm not going to even bother drawing in pencil on this. I'm just going to go straight in with the stick, because this paper is very absorbent. It's actually a bit nicer on ordinary cartridge paper. So you come down to the finer pens and you can do your finer details, obviously. Bits and pieces if you want them. So you've got your three ways then. You've got your fine pen, you've got the stick, and you've got the brushes.
What if you make it too dark? How do you get rid of it?
Well, you see I'm working up from my my lights to my darks in a way, aren't I? I put the water in there, and now I'm dropping in the dark. So I can control it more that way. I didn't go straight in with the dark, except where I'm absolutely sure of something, like where I am now, for instance. I know it's very dark there. So I can put these darks in. Now, you have got that thing with Indian ink, once it's on, it's like the Chinograph pencil. Were you here when I used Chinograph pencil? Yeah. The Chinograph pencil, you know, you want to go on first with your ordinary pencil to get your drawing right, and then go on with the Chinograph pencils afterwards, because if you don't, you can't get them off. And this is the same with the Indian ink. Once it's on, it's there. So if you're going to try this technique of playing with inks and pens and washes, yeah, you've got to be fairly sure of yourself. And let a little bit of dry brushwork come into it if you want, even on a paper like this, just dragging it across the side. I want more texture on this surface here, so there's no harm in my doing a little bit of dry brush across that to get that to start to feel that slightly gravelly surface of the concrete. So it isn't a matter of me coming in and you copying what I'm doing, it's a matter of me coming in and hopefully giving you ideas which you can then use in the way you want to do later. Right, so a different way than you've been used to using watercolour. Now, let that dry for a second, and we'll start dropping some colour on. Whereas that slightly stiffer brush will go over the surface of a rough paper. So the reason I've got those stiffer brushes is that I've got the soft brush to get in there and do my mop work, and I've got the stiffer brush to do the dry brush work over the surfaces. Now that's a flat, and obviously various sizes of flats are good. I may even use one here in a minute. If I want to put windows in or brickwork in or whatever, then a square brush, square object. It makes sense, round brush, round object. And for most of my oil painting I use filberts, which are a flat but curved edge. I haven't got any here because I don't need them. But they're a flat brush but with a curved end rather than a square end. The square-ended brushes were invented by the Impressionists for painting little spots of broken colour. Broken colour being, you want to make orange, you mix red and yellow. But if you want to make it as broken colour, you put red and yellow dots next to each other, and from a distance the brain is fooled, the eye is fooled, and it looks a bright, vivid orange. In the same way as in watercolour, if we mix some colours and put them on, they look duller than actually dropping one into another. So if I had a yellow ground and I drop red into it, I might get a brighter colour than mixing the two to start with. Yeah? Strange things that go on. Even choosing which colours are going to use. Aureolin yellow is a beautiful light lemon yellow, but transparent. Lemon yellow is opaque, it's deader. And if you mix aureolin yellow with, say, rose, you get a beautiful colour. Not the same with the lemon.
Mix aureolin with what?
Aureolin, rose.
Rose.
Yeah, rose into that, or yeah, beautiful. You know, drop the two in. That gives you a smashing sort of orangey red. Yeah. The same way with these azaleas. There's a lovely flame orange azalea, and we discovered the only colour you could do it was chrome yellow and rose. You had to use the two. But you know, unusual colours you wouldn't normally think of mixing. But to find them for that one was the more pink one. That was cobalt violet and rose and purple. To get the three. Lemon yellow is a cool yellow. Chrome yellow gets warmer. Cadmium orange will be going towards the red and warmer still. In the blues we've got our cerulean blue, which is a cool blue, right through to the ultramarine, which is much warmer, into the purples. In the reds you've got your orange end, you know, the cadmiums again, right through then to the purples at the other stage. So in our greens it's the same. We can see some very cool greens here, almost to the blues, and very warm greens there. It's vital that we play those one to another. So just a bit of fun. I'm going to take, because you just discussed with me about the aureolin yellow, which I noticed in the aircraft has come across the edge of my palette here. It's a quite greeny yellow at first, but let's just drop a bit of that in there. And you see how lovely transparent yellow that is. It's a beautiful yellow. I'm going to go right across the darks, and being a fairly transparent yellow, it's not coating that too much. Now if I made a mistake in my painting and I wanted to put a bit of more opaque back on there, then I could use the lemon yellow. So let's see if I can get my lemon yellow wet enough to do that. It looks much lighter in the palette, but I put a bit of lemon yellow on there. You can see how that covers it much more, but it's also deader, it's more inert. Down there, put a little bit down here. It's not as lively as that Aureolin yellow. So, and then you can see in the palette how it goes much warmer. We've got round to the chrome yellow and then the orange, the cadmium orange there. So rather than mixing in the palette now, I'm going to take a little bit of the cerulean blue and just let that drop into my yellow there to give a nice fresh green. Look for those colours, enjoy yourselves.
What colour is that?
That's purple, just purple. Got blue there. It's a little bit warmer, so I'll put a little bit of quinquedrone gold in. Quinquedrone gold's quite nice. It's a sort of more browny yellow than yellow ochre, quinquedrone gold. Useful for tiles and things. When you mix it with the reds and oranges, it's useful for tiles on French roofs and things. Put a bit of that over here as well. Bit of quinquedrone gold. Yes, good colour. Just so I can show you what it's about. There we are. Look, a nice sort of browny, orangey red. But if I say that now, if I put some just for fun, I mean, I'm really having. I'm here to do a demonstration. I'm not here to do a pair. I'm here to enjoy myself too, yeah. But I'm not here to do a painting to sell. I'm doing a painting to show you. Now that's the burnt sienna against it. So now you can see that it's a much more orangey brown than. It's quite fun, isn't it? And then we'll come across to here. Much lighter down to her arms here. Get the feeling of sunlight, shall we? Not sunlight. Miserable. God, I missed the worst weather, I gather. You've had 2 weeks of rain. I was saying it's lovely over there.
We don't wish to know that.
And then they tell us we haven't had enough.
Okay, yeah, well, the hosepipe band's still on, isn't it? Yeah, and you think, well, God, how much rain do you need for it?
Not the right sort of rain.
Not the right sort of rain, it's not wet enough. Some of those greens, you want to keep the thing coherent, so you'll often find one colour coming into another. So these greens may well be coming into the shadows here to help pull it together. Because in that space of time, I haven't really got a lot of time to look at things and actually get them right. And now I can come back in again with this and just play around a bit more, trying to get a few of these colours that weren't quite there back. Well, here we are then, texturing over the watercolour. I've brightened it up quite a bit more vibrance, and just brought that painting back.